Die. But not today. Makar rode slower than usual, not because he was afraid, but because he had learned to cherish silence. The ATV rumbled low and muffled, as if angrily swallowing the mud. After the day's rain, the road had become as slick as a soaped board. The dark soil glistened, puddles trembled with every vibration, and wet leaves on the roadside clung to the tires. He was 28. He didn't look like a movie hero. Rather, he looked like a man who had been forced to grow up far too quickly. His face featured sharp cheekbones and a stubble that turned into a dark shadow by evening. His eyes were light and attentive, as if always searching for danger where others saw only a void. He wore wet pixel camouflage and a plate carrier with a worn-out patch, the strap pressing hard against the fabric on his shoulder. A knife, his last bit of certainty, was fastened to the front of his vest, the hilt right under his hand like a promise, "I won't leave this unanswered." A small pouch clinked on carabiners behind his back. His gloved fingers were cold, but his palms were wet, from the handlebars, the rain, and the tension. A dry crackle from the radio, then silence. He was supposed to take a shortcut back to his unit, pick up some small items and relay coordinates, a routine movement between points that feels mundane until it turns into a trap. The bend in the road appeared unexpectedly. A low hill, a broken line of bushes, a hollow on the side, like a notch in the earth where shadows hide. And then the shadow came alive. First, he heard not shots, but a sharp clink against metal, like a stone hitting a shovel. Then a blast of air hit his ears. Assault rifle bursts tore through the evening, and everything around him became too loud, too close. Bullets ripped the bark off trees along the road, kicked up fountains of mud, and turned the air into a jagged mesh. Makar had no time to think or curse. His body did it for him. The ATV jerked. The handlebars were wrenched from his hands, the front wheel slid in the wet rut, and he went flying, not down, but sideways, toward the opposite edge of the road where the shoulder dropped sharply. The moment felt eternal. He saw the dark smear of mud before him and knew he was about to hit the ground, and the ground does not forgive. He fell hard, on his chest and shoulder, swallowing dirt, feeling a cold, sticky liquid on his lips. Nearby, metal screeched. The ATV landed on its side, tearing plastic and spitting sparks. The shots did not cease. They were getting closer. Makar rolled into a puddle, pressing himself against the earth, trying to become a stone rather than a man. His heart hammered so fast he could hear it like a drum in his own ribs. He reached out, his rifle, but found only emptiness. The weapon had stayed on the ATV. There was no luck here. There was only, "You are alive, so you must move." He clenched his teeth, tasting rust and bog. The knife, the only thing he had. He gripped the hilt and drew the blade. The thin metal in his hand seemed laughable against assault rifles, but it was better than nothing. The hollow at the bend came alive again, this time with voices. "There he is!" someone shouted sharply, viciously. "Shoot!" Makar rose to his feet almost soundlessly, though the mud tried to hold him back, pulling at his boots. He ran. The forest was 20 meters that could be the abyss between life and death. Bullets hissed past, as if the air were being sliced with a blade. He heard one strike a stone, a ring like a broken bell. Another passed over his head, a thin, sickeningly close sound. He didn't look back. Looking back meant wasting a second. A second here cost a heart. The forest greeted him with a wet breath. Dampness rose to his face, the smell of pine needles and rotting grass mixing with fear. And fear had a smell, salty, like sweat. He managed to dive into a gully where the ground dropped in a sharp ledge. He fell, slid, and bruised his knee against a root. A burst of fire passed over his head. The leaves shuddered as if someone had shaken the tree with their hands. Several branches showered down. Makar lay there, pressing into the wet earth. His breathing was ragged. Sweat dripped into his eyes, stinging his lashes and salting his lips. His mouth was so dry it felt as if he had been running through a desert for 10 hours, not 10 seconds, and all he could afford was not to swallow too loudly. He heard their footsteps at the edge of the forest, the snapping of branches, the heavy rustle of gear. They moved confidently, like those accustomed to holding power in their hands. There were 2 of them. He had seen them for a split second on the road as he was tossed into the air. 2 figures in Russian uniforms, dark helmets, rifles. One was shorter and broader in the shoulders, with a low brow and pinched lips that made his face look like a spiteful mask. He moved heavily, crouched, as if ready to pounce at any moment. The other was lanky, but with a strangely massive jaw and large hands. He looked as if his bones were bigger than his body. A knife glinted on each of their vests, and the lanky one had an RPG hanging at his side, a black cylinder, like a death sentence. Makar felt a chill run down his spine. They wouldn't just search, they would enjoy the hunt. He began to crawl, slowly, cautiously, making sure not to break a single dry twig. The ground beneath him was slick, the roots like wet ropes. Somewhere in the bushes a bird chirped, and that sound made him want to press even deeper into the earth. Everything became too loud. His own breathing, the rustle of fabric, even the thumping of blood in his temples. Evening was falling. The sun, muffled by clouds, sunk behind the tree trunks, and the world changed. Colors faded as if someone were turning down the brightness. This was his chance. At night, sound and light play against the pursuer. Live until dark, he told himself, not as a prayer, as an order. He stood up and ran, weaving between the trees. Running in a forest is always a risk, roots, holes, rocks, but staying meant waiting for them to close the circle. A snap behind him again, closer now. "Stop!" a shout. "You won't get away!" Makar slid down a wet slope, catching his balance at the last moment. His foot sunk into soft earth. He nearly fell. Before him was a fallen tree. He jumped over it, feeling his boot strike the bark, and for a second he imagined his ankle snapping, everything ending right there under this wet branch. It didn't snap. Next was a stream, narrow but slippery, with stones that could betray him. He leapt, landing on the edge, water splashing his face. Cold, freshness. For a moment it made it easier to breathe, and at the same time more terrifying, because the cold brought clarity. The shots stopped. They were no longer firing blindly. They were listening. That was worse. Makar stopped in a thicket of hazel, pressing his back against a tree. The knife was in his hand. The blade was wet. His palm was slipping. He wiped the hilt on his sleeve, but his sleeve was wet too. He felt his fingers trembling slightly, not even from fear, but from overexertion. And then a sound. Not a cry, not a shot, a simple, casual, Someone was right there. Makar pressed against the trunk so hard he felt the roughness of the bark under his shoulder blades. There were no poetic thoughts in his head, only don't breathe, don't move, don't let yourself be heard. A silhouette appeared to the right, the stocky one. He walked, scanning the ground, leaning down, touching branches. His rifle was at ready. Muddy streaks aligned his cheeks. His eyes were tense like a predator's. He muttered something under his breath, as if goading himself.
Makar stepped back into the shadow, feeling his back scrape against the wet bark. One step, another. The soldier passed by. Makar's heart thudded so loudly he feared, he'll hear it. He didn't. The man moved on, but he had been so close that Makar could smell him, tobacco, sweat, and metal. Night crept in without a sharp transition. At some point, it just became clear. The world could no longer be seen. It had to be felt. Shadows grew thicker, bushes turned blacker, sounds became sharper. The enemies changed too. Their voices grew angrier, more nervous. They didn't like the dark, because the dark does not obey an assault rifle. Makar moved slowly, like water flowing around stones. He knew the key was to wait for a mistake. The mistake came as all human weaknesses do, naturally. He heard one of them step aside, swearing and grumbling. The snapping of twigs receded. Then silence, in which the distant crackle of a fire could be heard. So the second one had stayed by the fire. They had decided to wait it out. They had lit a flame, and it was their beacon in the darkness. The one who had stepped away stopped near the bushes. Makar saw his back, the silhouette, the shoulders, the rifle on its sling. In that moment, the world narrowed to one thing, the distance between them. He took a step, a second. All his focus became as sharp as the tip of a blade. The knife in his hand felt heavier than any weapon, because this wasn't technology, it was a personal threshold. He approached without a sound, as if the forest itself had let him slip between the shadows. The strike was swift, not beautiful, not heroic, simply necessary. The soldier lurched, letting out a short, raspy sound as if he wanted to scream but couldn't. Makar caught him, preventing a noisy fall. He felt the body grow heavy in his arms. The smell of blood mingled with the scent of wet leaves. He didn't look at the face. He didn't have the right to a single extra second. He had the rifle now. The sling was over his shoulder. His fingers trembled, but now they trembled from something new, the fact that a chance had appeared. The other one, the lanky one with the massive jaw, was sitting by the fire. The flames cast an orange glow on his hands, the metal of his gear, and the glint of the knife on his vest. Scattered nearby were items from the ATV, straps, pouches, and a small photograph in a plastic bag. He was looking at it, grinning crookedly with that filthy satisfaction that has nothing to do with strength, only with baseness. "Look at this, it's his woman," he muttered, and chuckled, a vulgar, raspy sound to himself. "If only I had her right now, ha ha ha." Makar stopped behind a tree. There was no hatred like a fire in his mind. There was only clarity, cold and precise. If he lifts his head, he will shoot. If he shoots, you won't be fast enough. He stepped out of the shadow. The lanky one heard a rustle and turned with a half smile, thinking it was his comrade. "Hey, come here, look at what—" The words cut off. He saw someone who wasn't his own. He saw a stranger, a Ukrainian, and in that instant his face changed from arrogant mask into pure naked terror. His eyes widened, his jaw seemed even heavier, but now not from self-assurance, now from shock. Makar gave him no time. The shot rang out short and muffled, as if the forest itself swallowed the sound. Birds above bolted from the branches, and a few leaves drifted down like a light rain. The fire crackled as if nothing had happened, but Makar's world had changed. The tension didn't vanish immediately. It still gripped his ribs like a vice. He stood there, breathing heavily, feeling cold sweat run down his back. Then he lowered the rifle. He looked at the photograph in the plastic bag. There was a smile, warm and familiar. A pang of ache hit his chest, as if something living had been touched. "Alive," he whispered to himself. "I am alive." Only then did he notice he was injured, a long scratch on his arm, likely from a branch, and a dull ache under his ribs, like a bruise deeper than it seemed. But he was on his feet. That was what mattered. He extinguished the fire with dirt, leaving no light for others. He took what he could, water, bandages, a few essentials. He picked up his belongings from the ATV, as if piecing himself back together. Then into the darkness, away from the bend, away from the place where he had nearly stayed forever. The way back was no less difficult. The night drained his strength. The forest rustled, as if whispering something ancient and hostile. Every snap sounded like a footstep, every shadow like a silhouette, but now he had something he didn't have before, a chance. As the east began to gray, he saw familiar landmarks, a clearing, a tree line,
a broken post that had once been a boundary marker. And then he heard the sound he wanted to hear more than any other in the world, the muffled voice of his own people. "Halt! Who goes there?" Makar raised his hand. His strength was almost gone, his legs felt like lead, and his shoulders burned from the strap. He took a few more steps, and the world blurred, not from a bullet, but from exhaustion. "Friend," he whispered. "Makar, I'm back." Someone ran up and caught him by the arm. Others quickly checked him, took his weapon, and gave him water. The water was cold, and he swallowed it so greedily it hurt his throat, but it was the pain of life. He dropped to one knee, then sat right on the ground. He watched as the pale morning light rose over the forest, and in that moment, for the first time all night, his heart began to slow. Not at once, slowly, as if remembering how to beat, not for escape, but simply because you are alive. Someone placed a hand on his shoulder. "You made it out, brother," they said quietly. "You made it out." Makar closed his eyes and exhaled, long and deep, as if releasing all the darkness of that road, that turn, and that fall into the mud. He was wounded, he was exhausted, but he had returned, and with him the most important thing had returned. The feeling that even when the darkness squeezes you from all sides, you still have what an assault rifle cannot kill: your will, your mind, and the next step forward.